Okay, my name is Richard Pickering, and basically I feel the need to make a case for capitalism because right now it seems as though our country's in dire need of economic salvation, and what I hear from a lot of different people in a lot of different avenues and from individuals in our government and all over social media and everything is we need to get rid of this capitalistic system. It's greedy and corrupt, and it exploits and all these other things, and my aim in this video is to stand with capitalism and to explain what capitalism is and what I believe our problem is. And if you look at the situation, then I think you'll agree that our problem is not capitalism. Capitalism is just a framework. It's not good or bad. It's just a framework. And what it does is it allows an individual, such as myself or you, to own private property and to own the means to produce things and create wealth. So an individual can own the things that it takes to make money and to make wealth. And what I want to show you is that we do have a lot of greed and a lot of corruption, but if you look at the reality of the situation and you look at the corporations that are greedy and are corrupt and are basically destroying our economy and destroying our country, it's companies that have allowed themselves to be centralized. It's companies that have allowed themselves through lobbyists and other avenues to be subsidized by the government, or to be big enough that when they go to fail, the government bails them out and says we can't. That is not capitalism. That's actually the antithesis of capitalism. That is socialism. That is public ownership of the means of production. When a company assumes no risk, when a corporation assumes no risk and makes a product or a service and sells it, and then when they can't, when whatever it may be, when the public doesn't want it or the individuals don't want the product and they go to fail for whatever reason and the government bails them out, that is socialism. That is not capitalism. That's the opposite of capitalism. So we do have greed and we do have corruption and we do have all of this just wrongness in our economic system, but it's not the capitalism that's the problem. We're actually, it's the opposite of that. We're not capitalists enough. We don't allow the free market to behave in the manner that it's supposed to. We don't allow companies to fail because we feel they're too big, or because they're too tied in with the government and with our congressmen, and through these lobbyists are paying and getting all of these avenues of this money that subsidizes them, and corporate welfare and all these other things. Those aren't capitalistic ideas. Those are socialistic ideas. Those are monopolies. Monopolies are illegal in our capitalistic system. Monopolies are socialism. It's when government controls when the public, which sounds awesome, when the public owns the means of production and owns private property. That isn't as good as it sounds. Public means government. Government means no competition and no risk. There's no risk involved in a corporation that can't fail. So if you take a corporation, say, or a company that doesn't have lobbyists and isn't subsidized by the government and isn't gonna, if they live and die by what their product is or their service that they're giving, then if they're successful, it's not greed, it's risk. I mean, they assume major risk in a corporation to be able to put their money up and put themselves behind a product or a service that they feel is in need. And if it's not, they fall and die and they lose everything. Well, the opposite of that is what we have, and that's our problem. Our problem is that we allow the government to subsidize companies and to bail them out when they fail. And that is the opposite of capitalism. That is not capitalism, that is socialism. So if you find yourself caught up in being co-opted by, because we do feel like all this greed and all this corruption, we just need to do away with this system, but remember, free market and capitalism is the answer to our problems, okay? You being able to own property and own the means to create wealth is the answer to our problem. To get the government out of subsidizing and giving these corporations and these companies corporate welfare and bailing them out when they fail. And allowing the free market to work and allowing banks to fail. And we do. And having regulation to protect us as individuals doesn't mean that that's not capitalism. Capitalism just means that we own the private property. We can still have the regulation we need and keep our capitalist system. We can stop investment banks and deposit banks, commercial banks, from being one together like we used to. With the repeal of Glass-Steagall, we allowed these institutions to come together. We can reinstill these regulations that protect us and stop short selling and all these other avenues that are wrong, and still have capitalism. And if we actually look at the situation and look at the reality and separate ourselves from what we've allowed to become what we're calling our free market and capitalism, is not that. It's actually the complete opposite of it. So if you find yourself sick of the system, look at what's corrupted the system and understand that we don't need more centralized control. I mean, private ownership is pretty important. To be able to have and own property and not have it unlawfully taken from you, to me, is freedom. So when you're asking for the end of capitalism, think what you're asking for, because you're asking for the government to own your property and own all these corporations, and for there to be no private ownership, you know? So that's basically, yeah, that's it.